The Buddha sat peacefully beneath the Bodhi tree as his disciples gathered. Eager to learn the path to liberation, his eyes were serene, reflecting the wisdom of countless lifetimes and the compassion that healed even the most troubled hearts. Friends, the Buddha began softly, his voice carrying both gentleness and profound clarity. Today, we explore the roots of suffering and freedom. In the village nearby, a farmer named Javaka lived, consumed by anger and frustration, caught in cycles of suffering. Bowing deeply, the boy placed the flower before the Buddha, his eyes filled with curiosity. "Blessed One," the boy said, his voice soft yet eager, "why does this flower lose its beauty so quickly?" The Buddha gazed at the flower, a faint smile gracing his lips, and turned his attention to his disciples. The Buddha turned to his disciples and continued. Javaka believed his suffering came from the ox's actions. But truth lies deeper. As Javaka sat in his home, he saw his fields destroyed, his life effort uprooted, and his future uncertain. "I believed wealth would bring joy." "Blessed One," Arjun replied, his voice tinged with regret, "yet, I feel restless and empty." Javaka replied harshly, "I sowed these seeds, nurtured these plants, labored for this harvest, and now the ox has ruined everything." The monk smiled with gentle compassion and said, "Your suffering does not spring from trampled crops, but from the anger within." The Buddha paused his story and asked his disciples, "Do you see how suffering arises not from events but from inner reactions?" The disciples murmured their agreement, some pondering deeply, others nodding as clarity began to dawn in their minds. Returning to his tale, the Buddha continued. Javaka stared at the monk, baffled by the strange words and unexpected kindness. "What do you mean?" Javaka demanded. "This loss is real. How can you speak of anything else causing my suffering?" The monk knelt by Javaka, saying, "Your suffering is like weeds growing within a garden. It arises from anger, not loss." Javaka scowled, shaking his head. "Then how can I free myself from these weeds that strangle my mind and heart?" The monk responded, "Recognize their roots. Observe your thoughts as they arise and dissolve. Cultivate patience, and the weeds will wilt." Days passed, and Javaka reflected upon the monk's words, sitting amidst the ruins of his field, his mind calmer each day. One morning, Javaka met the monk again and said, "I see anger rise within me. I watch it, and it fades." The monk smiled warmly and replied, "You have begun to cultivate wisdom, Javaka. By observing, you weaken anger's hold on you." The Buddha turned to his disciples and said, "Friends, observe your minds as a gardener observes the soil, tending and cultivating. Negative habits are weeds," he continued, "but mindfulness is the hand that pulls them out, freeing the garden to flourish." The disciples listened intently, some seeing how their own anger, ignorance, or desire had entangled them in webs of suffering. Javaka began to understand this truth. The Buddha said, each day observing the weeds and strengthening his resolve to uproot them. The ox returned to Javaka's field, the Buddha added, but this time, he watched without reacting. His anger now diminished. Seeing the ox before him, Javaka guided it gently away from his crops, his heart steady, his thoughts calm and clear. Freedom comes not from controlling events, the Buddha said, but from cultivating the mind to flow with wisdom and compassion. The disciples bowed to the Buddha, their hearts filled with gratitude, ready to walk the path away from their suffering's roots. Another day, the Buddha walked with his disciples through the grove, the sun casting dappled light upon their peaceful path. They came upon an elderly gardener tending his plants with care, his hands moving skillfully among flowers and soil. The Buddha paused and said, "Observe this man, friends. His dedication to his garden holds profound lessons for our minds." The gardener approached and greeted the Buddha, Bowing with respect, his face radiant with the calm of his labor, "Venerable Sir," the gardener said, "it is an honor to see you. How may this humble servant assist your teaching?" The Buddha smiled and replied, "Your actions speak louder than words. May we observe your work and learn from your wisdom?" The gardener nodded, returning to his tasks, carefully removing weeds that threatened his flowers, trimming each plant with precision. Turning to his disciples, the Buddha said, "This man's garden flourishes because he knows what to nurture and what to discard." Friends, our minds are no different, the Buddha continued. To cultivate peace, we must uproot harmful thoughts and nourish wholesome ones. The disciples watched as the gardener uncovered a clump of stubborn weeds. His effort steady, his focus unwavering and calm. One disciple asked, "Master, how do we identify which thoughts to remove and which to nurture within our own minds?" The Buddha replied, "Consider the results. A thought that leads to greed, anger, or ignorance is a weed to be removed. A thought that grows wisdom, compassion, and mindfulness," he added, "is a seed to be watered and cherished with attention." The gardener overheard and said, "It takes vigilance to spot weeds early. Left unchecked, they spread and choke the healthy plants." The Buddha nodded in agreement. Likewise, friends, negative habits often start as small seeds, unnoticed, yet capable of great harm. Through mindfulness, we can observe the nature of our thoughts, the Buddha explained, and guide our minds like this gardener. The disciples stood silently, reflecting on how their inner gardens had been shaped by both wholesome and unwholesome tendencies. Over time, the gardener, now pruning a flowering bush, said, "Some plants bloom only with patience. Quick results are rare but worth the wait." The Buddha turned to the disciples and said, "Cultivation requires patience. The fruits of wisdom ripen slowly but provide lasting nourishment." One disciple asked, "Master, what tools do we use to cultivate our minds as skillfully as this gardener tends his plants?" The Buddha responded, "The tools of mindfulness, effort, and concentration help us trim distractions and water the seeds of insight." Friends, the Buddha continued, each of you has this garden within. It is your responsibility to tend it with diligence and care. The gardener paused his work and said, "Every season brings its own challenges. Some plants need shade, while others thrive in sunlight." The Buddha said, "So too must we adapt our efforts, understanding that different situations require varied approaches to nurture inner peace." Another disciple said, "Master, what if the weeds have grown thick and tangled? How can we restore the garden to balance?" The Buddha replied, "Begin where you are. Uproot one weed at a time. And with perseverance, the garden will gradually transform." The gardener brought a bucket of water to pour over the plants, saying, "Without water, even the strongest seeds cannot grow." The Buddha said, "Water symbolizes our attention. Whatever we focus on grows stronger, whether it is a weed or a flower." Friends, the Buddha continued, "Be mindful of what you nourish with your attention, for it shapes the landscape of your inner world." A disciple asked, "Master, how do we ensure that weeds do not return once removed, threatening the balance of the garden?" The Buddha replied, "We must remain vigilant, observing the mind daily. Complacency allows negativity to take root and spread unnoticed." The gardener shared, "I walk my garden each morning, checking for pests and weeds. Regular care keeps the plants strong." The Buddha smiled and said, "This gardener's practice mirrors our own. Consistent mindfulness protects the mind from falling into harmful patterns." Friends, the Buddha said, "Commit to daily cultivation, for true freedom arises through steady effort and attentiveness to the present moment." The disciples bowed to the Buddha, grateful for the teaching and inspired to tend their inner gardens with renewed dedication and wisdom. Another day, the Buddha and his disciples sat by the river, its flowing waters whispering lessons of resilience and harmony. The Buddha gazed at the serene currents, his voice steady, and said, "Friends, this river reflects the path to liberation." The disciples observed the flowing water, its persistence evident as it navigated obstacles, carving its course toward the vast ocean. This water cannot be held, yet it nourishes the soil, sustaining life. Such is the nature of impermanence. Suma worked tirelessly, shaping clay into pots, yet frustration consumed her whenever cracks marred her creations, tempting her to abandon them. The Buddha paused and added, "She longed for perfection, but impatience led her away from the wheel, leaving her growth stunted." One day, her master observed her struggle and said, "Suma, the clay demands steady hands and time. Impatience will not mold beauty." Master, if impermanence is inevitable, how can we find joy in the fleeting moments of life? The Buddha turned to the disciple, his voice calm and reassuring. Joy is found in presence, not permanence. The Buddha said. Suma returned to the wheel, each turn bringing her closer to understanding the interplay of patience and practice. Suma soon shaped pots of resilience and beauty, transformed not by her perfection but by her unwavering dedication to growth. This river does not lament its journey, nor does it hold on to what has passed. It simply flows. The Buddha explained. The Eightfold Path offers us the potter's wheel of life, guiding us to shape the clay of wisdom. He added, right view, intention, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration form the framework for freedom from suffering. A disciple asked, "Master, how do we begin shaping our minds when cracks of negative habits threaten our efforts?" The Buddha replied, "Begin with patience. Each step along the Eightfold Path strengthens the mind and diminishes the hold of negativity." Another disciple asked, "Master, like the river, how do we navigate obstacles without breaking the flow of our mindfulness?" The Buddha said, "Adapt, as the river does. Wisdom and persistence guide us to flow through challenges without resistance or despair." The Buddha gestured to the river, saying, "This water does not resist the rocks but shapes them through its gentle and persistent flow." The disciples nodded, inspired by the metaphor, recognizing the need for resilience and calm amid life's inevitable trials and barriers. One disciple asked, "Master, how do we prevent fear and doubt from halting the progress of shaping our mental clay?" The Buddha replied, "Focus on the present moment, where fear dissolves." The Eightfold Path anchors us in effort, truth, and mindfulness. The Buddha added, "Friends, like Suma, we learn from each crack. Mistakes are opportunities for growth, not chains that bind us." Another disciple asked, "Master, when our thoughts flow like turbulent rivers, how can we calm the waters to find clarity?" The Buddha replied, "Through mindfulness. Observe the thoughts as they rise and fall, like waves dissolving back into the ocean of calm." The river's sound deepened, accompanying the wisdom imparted by the Buddha, its currents inspiring the disciples to reflect upon his words. The Buddha said, "Friends, remember, each journey begins with a single step, and each step shapes the path toward liberation. Let us continue our journey, carrying these truths within us, and sharing them with others who seek wisdom." Rising from beneath the banyan tree, the Buddha led his disciples along the riverbank, their footsteps light with purpose. The river, ever flowing, seemed to guide them, a silent yet eloquent companion on their path. Another day passed, yet the lesson of impermanence endured, echoing through the hearts of those who walked beside the enlightened one. Thank you for watching. Buddha's teachings are always with you. Subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next video.